Hello, my name is Joe Edge. I'm here at the tax shop in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Today I would like to talk to you about tax scams and what some tax preparers do to scam you out of your money and scam the government out of theirs. First and foremost, what I would like to tell you is that regardless of whatever appears on that tax return, whoever puts it on there, whether it's a paid preparer or not, you as the taxpayer are ultimately responsible for what appears on that tax return. So at the end of the day, if money has to be paid back, it comes out of your pocket, including interest and in some cases penalties. So please beware and take what I'm about to tell you to heart, and be cautious about who you do business with, and be especially aware of what's on your tax return. First and foremost, each tax preparer has to have two numbers in their possession to take compensation to do tax work for you. Okay? The first number that will appear on one of your tax return forms is called an EFIN number. Okay? It's at the top of this form called 8879, and right where it's highlighted here is a 6-digit numeric number. Ours happens to be 650525. Every person that electronically files a return has to have one of those numbers, okay? Every business, okay? Each preparer within that business has to use what they call a PTIN number, or it begins with, let me see, it's right over here, okay? It begins with the letter P, and here on this form here, it's P00551335. That happens to be my PTIN number. So each person that you or would consider doing your tax return has to have both of those numbers, and they should disclose them if you ask them. There shouldn't be any reason why they don't want to disclose that information to you, other than they may be a scammer. Okay? Responsibility of what's on the tax return is the most important thing you need to take away from this video today. And I keep saying it over and over again because a lot of people don't get it. They think that because they pay a tax preparer to do their tax return, that if something's wrong in the tax return, it's up to the tax preparer to make it right. No, that's not correct. It's your responsibility to make sure what's on the tax return is correct. And let me address some of those issues that are common among scammers today. The first thing you've probably seen in the area are these signs that are in the ground that say, bring your last pay stub to us and we will do your tax return for you. Well, in certain circumstances, that's an acceptable process, but with the following conditions, okay? If a tax preparer early in the season uses your pay stub prior to January 31st, then it's wrong. And this is the reason why. Employers are not required to mail out W-2s until January 31st. They have to be postmarked January 31st. This year, 2018, we are filing 2017's tax returns. The first day of tax season is January 29th, which means you can have your tax return prepared prior to the 29th, but the IRS is not accepting them until January 29th. So there's only a 2-day time difference there, which isn't going to make any difference in the amount of time you get your refund. This year, any refund that contains earned income credit or the child tax credit is not going to be issued until February 20th anyway. So you have more than enough time to wait for your W-2 from your employer. So if a tax preparer out there insists on using your last pay stub, there's a very high likelihood that they could be scamming you just to get your money while you're sitting in front of them and throw a big number of a refund in front of your face. Okay? So that's one issue to consider. If the information on the pay stub is incorrect, you could be cheating yourself out of money. Okay? So it's in your best interest to wait for your W-2, okay? In the event that you have to use the last pay stub, and this really shouldn't happen until after February 15th, okay? Another form has to be included in your tax return. It's an IRS Form 4852. That's the substitute W-2 form, okay? So in the event you use a pay stub, that form has to exist in your tax return. So you should look for that, okay? The IRS requires, as a process of doing the substitute W-2 from the pay stub, there's due diligence requirements that you have to have made every reasonable attempt to obtain your W-2 from your employer and things like that. And most times these scammers, they use the pay stub to do your tax return. They're not going to do any due diligence. They're going to give you a song and dance about why they're allowed to use it and just move on from there. All they want is quick money to get you in, get you out, and get your money. So just be aware of that. Okay. The next thing that tax scammers really go after and will put on your tax return without you knowing is something called refundable credits. Things like the education credit, which means sometime during 2017 you had to have gone to college. Okay, and this college should, if you're doing it right, issue a form to you called an IRS Form 1098-T, okay, which indicates that you attended college and you paid out-of-pocket expenses to go to that college. If you went to college and got financial aid to go to college, you're not entitled to the education credit, okay? No matter what the scamming tax preparer tells you, you're not entitled to it. So please be aware of that. One of the other credits that they'll typically put on your tax return, if you have a child as a dependent, the daycare credit. If your child did not attend daycare and you didn't pay for it out of pocket, you have to have out-of-pocket daycare expenses to take that credit. So if that is not the case, then you can't claim that credit. In order to claim that credit, the daycare provider will issue you a form that has their employer ID number on it, as well as the name and address of that facility that provided the daycare. So that's the document you need to take the daycare credit. Okay. Probably the biggest refundable credit that there is that tax scammers take advantage of is the earned income tax credit. Okay. In order for you to qualify for the earned income tax credit, the child had to have lived with you for more than 50% of the year. Okay. Just because you can claim a child on your tax return does not mean you're entitled to the earned income tax credit. This especially applies to non-custodial parents who pay child support, and they're of the mistaken belief that because they pay child support, they're entitled to the earned income tax credit. That is incorrect. Okay? The IRS is and has been looking very hard at people that claim the earned income tax credit for their children. So that's something that they have been looking very hard at, and they will continue to do that as well. Okay, let's say you're a single person, you have a decent paying job, and you never had enough money withheld from your taxes, and you pay every year. The way the tax scammers approach people like you is they will create a fraudulent business, and that business will generate, in their eyes, a large negative income to reduce your taxable income in order for you to get a refund and not have to pay the IRS. So what you would be looking for on the tax form is, this is line 12 of the 1040, where the highlighted line is there. You're looking for a big negative number there. And what that does is it reduces your taxable income and makes you get a refund instead of owe money like you probably should owe because you didn't have enough money withheld to begin with. That's how tax scammers will get over and make themselves look like heroes. Okay, so that's another issue you want to look at. Here's what the tax scammers will do to get past the system and try and look authentic in your eyes. First of all, they don't have a professional tax prep software package that they use. They will sit in front of their computer and go online and use programs like Tax Act or TurboTax or one of those programs and actually do your tax return in there. And both of those programs and similar programs like that don't require an EFIN number or a PTIN number, okay? And the way you know this is when they print out the tax return on the bottom page of the 1040, on the second page where I have it highlighted down here, instead of having the preparer's name and PTIN number and all of that, it'll say self-prepared, okay? They don't want to sign the tax return because it brings attention to them, and that's what they don't want, okay? So they'll use those online tax prep packages to prepare your tax return. They'll refuse to sign the tax return and say this is all that's required where it says self-prepared, okay? Last but not least, they insist on cash payment. Okay, so there's no paper trail as to whether they did the tax return or not. It's only your word against theirs, and that's what they want. Okay, so those are just a few of the issues that I wanted to bring to your attention today for you to be aware of. At the end of the day, let me reiterate the two most important parts that will identify a fraudulent tax preparer. Remember, each tax return that you pay for has to have an EFIN number. Remember, it's a 6-digit numeric code that identifies the location of where you went to get your tax return done. And last but not least, each preparer is required to put their PTIN number on the tax return. The number begins with a P. In my case, mine is P00551335. That number has to be on the tax return. And if you don't see that and you don't feel comfortable with the situation that and the person you're dealing with, you should just get up and leave. Because people like this, at the end of the day, because you're responsible for everything that's on your tax return, regardless of who does it, you're the one that's going to have to pay in the long run. And sooner or later, the IRS has ways of finding those fraudulently prepared tax returns.